Well, thank you very much, Father Malone and Father Deese. I thought I'd go ahead first with Father Malone so he didn't feel slighted. I don't think there's many people that can say they've traveled the world with some people, but as far as Father Deese and Father Malone, especially Father Deese, truly have traveled the world. From Cuba, 7 or 8 times or more, to Africa, to Italy a number of times, to giving my free consultation to the Pope, no matter if you wanted to hear it or not. I wasn't Catholic, so some of that didn't go over very well, but it was what it was. I want to thank the Boy Scouts for giving me this honor. My original speech was about 3.5 hours, and I learned from the best, who was Fidel Castro. When we used to go to Cuba, the dictator was nocturnal, and so he never slept at night. So he would find out the list of people that were in town. He'd go knocking on the hotel doors and etc., get you up and preach to you all night long, no matter if you really wanted it or not. So you got it. So to spare that, I'm going to shorten mine a little bit more, so it won't be quite that long. So how many of you tonight in the audience were in the Cub Scouts? Could you raise your hands? Okay, quite a few. How many were in the Boy Scouts? Wow, okay. How many were Eagle Scouts? Look at that. Impressive. Okay. I thought originally that we would be talking to an audience that didn't really know much about the Boy Scouts, so I was going to give a little bit of education. Tonight I also, after trying to tax myself on my memory about some of the events that happened, I was handed a roster of my troop, and it showed me joining when I was 10 3/4 years old, and I guess you have to be 11. So as somebody said, maybe I was breaking the rules at an early age. So with all the people that were Boy Scouts, there's what I have to say tonight is I learned a lot of life's lessons from being a Boy Scout. So what I did is Boy Scouts and the scouting program instilled a set of morals and values in me that helped me guide me into who I am today. As a young kid, you have a lot of different heroes in your life. We had a guy across the street from us that was very mechanical, and since we were involved in go-karts and mechanical things, he was like our hero, because he could fix anything. We always said, well, we'll wait for Stanley to get home. So he would help us. In our neighborhood, it was a neighborhood filled with kids, about 175 kids on 2 sides of the street, big Catholic neighborhood. The oldest son in this family that had 11 had their son go to the Rose Bowl. And I remember my mother was really excited about driving all the way to California to go to the Rose Bowl to see Butchie play. And so he was one of our heroes as a kid. Our scoutmaster and some of the leaders were also heroes to us. We didn't have really organized sports at a younger age at that time, so you just kind of played in the park, in the neighborhood, and on the street a lot. So that was kind of where you played at that time. So scouting became a very important thing. It was a structured thing, and it was something that you could join and get a lot of benefit out of it. And so the scouting program was all about serving others. And so I remember when I joined, after being a Cub Scout and going to different events in your Cub Scout uniform, the first kind of active role we took in something was we were patrolling at the Aquatennial Parade, and I can still remember the streets. It was Hennepin, and it was like 10th and 11th were our streets. And two of us would go side by side down each street, and then we'd cross over and then come back. And we're looking for anybody that needed first aid. And at the end of our street, they had dropped off a semi-trailer, and they had a nurse in it and first aid equipment and et cetera in there to help with any kind of things that needed to be done for anybody that you brought back. They had, remember, for the younger people in the audience, but some of these, there was no cell phones, there were no computers at that time. We were living in a great age. So anyway, there was some kind of walkie-talkie system, whatever, so if we needed help that we could use that. So the first person we came across on one of our patrols was somebody that got cut by a lawn chair when they were sitting there. Now this is a Saturday day parade, and it's, about 8 deep with people watching the parade. So we're on the inside going down the road with the parade. And so we brought that person back, and they got help from the nurse and bandaged up, and away they went. Then we came back, and one or the second one after that, we were still rebounding from feeling really cool, because now we had our Boy Scout uniform on, and full uniform, and we were cool. We were Boy Scouts, and we figured it out now. I would have been 11 and about a month old, so basically 11 years old. But we really thought we were something. Got a big audience of people seeing us, and making sure we looked good, the whole time. So anyway, we're going down the path, and my partner spots this lady that had some other people around her and said that she needed help. So what do the Boy Scouts do? We gather her up, the two of us, and we bring her back to the trailer, and there's some steps. We get her up, and she's pregnant, and she's very, very pregnant. And we get her in there, and the nurse takes a look at her and was going to call to have somebody come, and there was nobody to come. The phone, our little phone system didn't work. And she said, she's going to have the baby right now. She says, you guys got to help. So we both put on our gloves and etc. And I was into it, because I was not that great in school. I always learned by doing versus by reading or whatever. So she said, okay, she's going to have it now. We had to try to make her comfortable, get the sheets out, etc. My little friend that was with us started to get squirmy, and so I was down kneeling helping her, and he's holding a sheet and a towel, and he's going like this. And so I kept looking at him. I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to have two here. He's going to either faint or throw up or both. And so he just couldn't look. So I got right in there and helped out, and we delivered the baby. And so I was kind of waiting for the next step, what we were going to do from there, and was getting kind of, okay, let's get with it. And unfortunately, but fortunately for that lady, and probably fortunate for us, we sent the other team out to run out to get the first aid people, and some other really experienced first aid people came, much older than us and much more experienced. And then they eventually got the ambulance there, and they came in, finished the job, and took her off, and then we hit the brick road. So from that day on, I was convinced that I could deliver a baby. So anytime I saw a really pregnant lady, I would always stop and ask her how she was and if she needed assistance, because I was really experienced and I was going to help. So fortunately for them, unfortunately for me, probably fortunately for me also, that never happened until I ended up fatherhood, and we delivered one of our first out of 3 boys. That's one of them the oldest here, is here tonight. So when that happened, I knew the whole process and assisted the doctor. And so, but I was getting sworn at all the time too. But it worked out well. So there was a good life lesson that I really didn't get a chance to use again, but I was prepared. If it was going to happen again, I was going to try to be there. So I kept even asking them if they needed, are you sure you're not ready to have the baby? And they said, no. These people might just be walking down the street. So from there, out of three examples I kind of had is it was kind of early springtime and it was spring break, and Shakopee was flooding from the spring raids on the Minnesota River. And they had it on TV that they were sandbagging and diking up the area to try to save it. So, back then, who helped out? As you see on TV now, it's the National Guards. Who was there before? It was the Boy Scouts. Who'd you call when you had a problem? The Boy Scouts. So we got down there with a group of the leaders, and when we got down there, there were about 200 other Boy Scouts down there, and they had set up just the riverbank was about a block and a half from downtown, and that was the area they were trying to save, among others. So it kind of dipped there. So they had dump truck after dump truck of sand, and of course our job was to take the sandbags. Some of us get on our knees, and we had our work shirts on but our scarf on, and get down there and scoop the sand or shovel it in to these bags while a couple of them would hold it. Then we would tie them and kind of throw them to the side and keep going. We did that for 2 or 3 days, and as adults and older people would go by, they were saying, thank God that we didn't have that job. It didn't bother us, bending over all day and doing that. So one of us, I don't remember exactly who, got the bright idea, well, we're kind of supervised here, we're kind of pent in. So we thought, well, we go back another day, not with the Boy Scouts, but just go there, and so we wanted to get on the front line and put the bags up. So we did that, and I was about this height, always at a very young age. So we went back. Remember now, I got in the Boy Scouts just short of being 11 years old, so which doesn't happen, right? Yeah, I don't know how it happened, but I did, according to your list. So we went down there, got on the front line, and it's one of those deals that it's so crappy and so miserable, you say, God, isn't this fun? And so it was cold, spring water. Of course, it was going over the top of our boots because it was leaking through the dam. And we were down there for about 8 or 9 hours. And I'll tell you, is that work, trying to, be on a chain gang to, handing bags to the next person, whatever. And of course, me being one of the taller ones, trying to throw them up above. And as the wall got higher, it got harder. But we went home and said, oh, that was great, because the rest of the gang didn't get to do that. So that was another thing. And you know what? When we went home at night, we really felt sense of accomplishment, and we really felt that we were a part of helping the save the downtown area, along with hundreds of other kids. So, it just gave you a great feeling to serve. I remember another time there was a bad storm, and it was not a tornado, but branches everywhere. And after they knew it was safe, they sent the Boy Scouts in. I don't even remember where it was. And we went in and picked up, twigs, branches, everything, and helped the people in their houses and whatever, and spent a couple days doing that. People would bring out lemonade, cookies, and whatever to thank us, and help clean up the area. Another opportunity for us to feel good. And then, as we were talking tonight, our scoutmaster was involved with like emergency first aid. So he had a 56 Chevrolet station wagon, and he had a siren underneath his hood and some red lights and a police scanner. So he would always go to all the emergency areas. So somehow, whenever there was some kind of disaster, we were like one of the first troops there because he got us there. So we thought that was really pretty cool. So it learned to appreciate the opportunity to serve the community and feel really good about that. And that's something that has stayed with me. And that was driven into the Boy Scouts, and I think they were putting up the Scout Oath, the law for the rest of you that haven't been in Scouting. So I had several of those kind of opportunities. Then in our troop, which people wanted to hear about, we had one of the fathers that had a whole garage full of chrome cleaner. I don't know where he got it, but it was just a big garage. So he said, I'll donate it to the Boy Scouts. And he actually came up with a model, which I was good at taking a model and improving on the wheel versus inventing something new. And so he said, okay, why don't you sell this, and we'll give the troop a little bit of the money, and you guys will keep the rest, going door to door and et cetera. So, as you can imagine, who sold the most in our troop? This was just our troop, and we eventually ran out of it. So, and the idea was every year we would go to a camp called Mini Point, and it's a huge camp up in northern Minnesota, and I don't know how many troops it could hold at a time, but it seemed like more than you ever saw in a lifetime as a little kid. So we would use that, and then the troop would get money also to help going to camp. So the kids could earn money and help defer the cost, which wasn't much, but they wanted everybody to work, which is key. They wanted everybody to help out. So, which I think people in my company is already starting to laugh. So we did that, and when we ran out, I couldn't think of, I said, this is really a great model. So I was looking through Boy's Life, which I think everybody here that was a Boy Scout did religiously, because there was always the coolest, latest camping trips that different troops took, all kinds of feats that they did, and et cetera. And it had want ads, and it had all kinds of other articles. So I went online, or not online because there wasn't any online, excuse me, found a ad for these light bulbs, and it said Miralot light bulbs, guaranteed for life, and if they ever burn out, they'll replace them, free, a charge. So it said you can be a distributor. So I put the money together to become distributor and get the box, and I sent away for it and got it, and then started selling it door to door, and it seemed pretty effectively. And so the bulb sold for 89 cents, and it was made out of a high tungsten filament, so it did use more electricity. Not everybody knew, but I happened to mention that. But the unique advantage was if you had a really tall hallway light going down the stairs or whatever that took forever to change, or something else that just a bearcat to replace, that's where you would put it. And so I'd sell those door to door for 89 cents, and then 150 watts were like $1.19. And so there was, unfortunately on that model, there was only like 23 cents of profit. So I gave some to the, to the troop, some to the kids, and then I kept some as a business. And so got them selling it, and then the more I sold, the price dropped. And so I thought, well, this model is working okay. And I thought, well, and it worked well for our troop. I said, I'll get others. Might as well get more troops involved. So I ultimately got more troops involved. Then the same company came out with what was really a home run, and it was called Durasan. And it puts, it deodorizes, sanitizes, puts a blue tint in the toilet, good for 3,000 flushes or approximately 6 months. It won't harm the toilet. Now, going back to the model that when I set this up, every troop you could always guarantee, so there's 40 or 50 kids and you got them in the program, you could guarantee, this is going back to the boys, to the lights, that they would sell 3. And so a minimum of 3. And the minimum of 3 is 1 to their parents, 1 to one of the 2 neighbors, and then 1 to one of the 2 sets of grandparents. Excuse me. So you know that they had a minimum of that, so if you had 50 in the troop, you knew you had 150. And then there were kids that sold anywhere from being superstars to, middle and in between. So that would work well. We would distribute more, we would get more, and route them out and sell them. So then they came out with this thing called the Durasan, which I just talked about. This was before any of the other companies like Procter & Gamble or anybody else had blue toilet water, for the tank of their toilet. So it sold for $1.98, and ultimately I got enough in the volume that would go down to 40 cents. So there was a lot of room to give to the troop and to the kids, and then keep a little bit for myself, just for operating costs. Plus I had to buy all these things. So it was very gimmicky, and they sold themselves, and you had people call and say, hey, they want some more. So what would happen is people would have a little party over at their house, and Joe would go back and use the bathroom, and he'd come running back and say, hey, everybody's got to come and take a look at the toilet. He said, I went to the bathroom, and there it went from blue to green or to yellow. And so everybody else come back, they say, you kidding me? So then they all want to know, where did you get it? So, you gave them a little brochure, so you gave me your phone number, and a lot of times you couldn't fill orders fast enough. So I didn't have to go on the three per scouting minimum there, so you could sell a lot more. So that was a home run. So I did that for a while, and then ended up going from there to buying a small apartment project, which the friends down the street, father had passed away, and the 2 older brothers and the mother in the family room and in the kitchen would always talk about they were in the apartment business, and so that's where that came along. So that they would talk about it constantly. So I'd listen all the time, and so I went through the want ads, learned, would circle stuff, write it down on notebook pads, kind of learned the lingo as I went around long talking to these people, and then ended up buying one. And then when I had the commercial light bulbs, I was a little over 12, and I put my Sunday suit on, take the bus downtown with a briefcase, and go down, and I can still remember it was like Toll Real Estate. It was Dayton Hudson, which was Target, and they had just built their first Target store. And so I would go in there, and there would be a whole long, narrow room of people waiting to see buyers. And so now it's about 3:30 or whatever, and these guys are getting kind of tapped out, and there's a whole bunch of people in the, still on chairs in there waiting to be seen by one of these buyers. And they'd see this kid in the back, 12 years old or 13, with a briefcase. So obviously they'd have you in right away because they wanted to know what the heck you're doing. So I'd take out my stuff, start to give them a pitch or whatever. Then I know I had them hooked because they go, stop for a minute. And so I'd say, okay. And so they go in the other room, bring back a couple other guys, and they say, okay, now start over, will you? And so I said I did. So I ended up would sell them, and then I ended up selling more. So every time I take the bus back, I said, geez, if I could pickle myself this age, I could be a millionaire in no time. So, so I thought that was good, and I thought I had a real advantage by not, being any older. So I went from there to still looking at Boys Life, and we had go-karts, and we had other things we were doing at that time. So another thing I saw in Boys Life is there was a AM radio you could buy kit out of Boys Life for, I don't know, $19 or whatever, and it would broadcast over AM channels, or just over AM, on the same frequency where the radio channels are. So I quickly ordered one, And then a friend and myself, we goosed it up a little bit. We were only supposed to have an aerial of like 10 or 15 feet in the area, so it was kind of like the idea was just within a few houses and you know, within your house. So we put it over the top of WDGY, and I had already then hooked it to a bigger aerial that was up towards, that was for a ham radio that I hadn't actually gotten my license for yet, and then took some other parts and boosted up the radio and the power of it. And so it worked great. So one Saturday, my friend and I, we had transistor radio, and so he was gonna, we lived down by Lake Harriet, so it was about 3 miles out to Southdale, which, does this date me or what? They were just building it. So he took some dimes, and he would pedal out, and he would call every 5 or 7 blocks where he could find a payphone and say, yeah, I could hear you, and it's still strong as heck. So he was out, you know, about 1.5 miles or 2, and I decided, okay, I said, why don't you keep going out to about where Southdale is and then call me. I said, I'm gonna go down and eat. And he says, okay. Now got a stack of 45 records, and I'm playing like the latest hits, tan shoes and purple shoelaces, and polka dot hat, and man, oh man, you know, some of the latest hits are still around today. So I had these going, and so as any disc jockey, you could just play, you know, 3 or 4 songs without having to come back on the air, which I did, but I had been on the air earlier quite a bit. So I went downstairs. My mother had made me, I remember still, 2 hot dogs, some tater tots, and I got a little Diet Pepper or something. Pretty soon we had a knock on the door, and there was 2 men there, and they wanted to come in. My mother said certainly, and they were with the FCC. And she said, well, what would you guys want, you know? And they said, well, there's been somebody broadcasting over the radio station, and they had looked up and down the streets and saw this aerial and figured that that might be it, you know. So they talked to me, and I showed it to them, and I said, oh. So they gave us a little something in a write-up, and now I never told these before because my kids were still growing up. Now my youngest just went to college, so now I can kind of release some of this information more to the public. So it ended up being, it was a federal offense. Which I knew probably there was some problem with it, but I thought, geez, being my age, they weren't going to do much. So it ended up being that we had to go downtown, my mom and dad and myself, and we got downtown, and they weren't really sure exactly still what court they were going to see me in. So it ended up being like a referee or somebody in a federal courtroom. And as normal, what's happened other times, other people from other courts that worked there came in to hear this story. So I was in there, and then they said, geez, I told them I got it through Boy's Life, but I thought, well, it might go a ways. And so it kind of went over some of that, and so they said the severity of it was either 5 or, that was only 5 years in jail, but I figured that, you know, 13 or so, they're 12, they aren't going to put me in jail that long. So I, which of course they didn't at all. So then set a $5,000 fine. So obviously they let me go. And so as luck has it, later, since this was a big neighborhood, we had a garage back by a telephone pole, and this friend and I had taken all the phone lines and hooked onto them and brought them in through our garage window. And somebody in the neighborhood moved in, and the lineman had gone to hook up a new phone and saw all these wires going in the garage. So later, they were going to take our phone, which I think they did for just a few days, and away. And of course, then I had all kinds of extensions in the house. But went back down to see this man downtown, and had a bigger audience for people who wanted to hear what was going on. And again, they let me go. Now, I didn't get that through Boy's Life. It was just, I was interested in everything, so I would do everything. It's kind of like delivering a baby. So I figured I could do the rest of it. So it was great back then being it, and it was great, you know, being a Boy Scout. So Now I'm a supervisor, I'm a patrol leader, and we're up to Meany Point Camp. And so being a patrol leader, you'd have anywhere from 5 to 7 kids in your patrol. And so we're up there, and you ride up in your full uniform to go up to camp, but then you have to get out and you have to change and put on work clothes because you need to put up the tents and whatever. So not really totally watching this tenderfoot that was there, not knowing exactly what happened to him right away. He had gone into the woods, laid down on the ground up there, and for some reason he didn't even have underwear on, and he changed his clothes, and it happened to be right in poison ivy. And 3 or 4 days later, it broke out, and we got to look at that and said, oh, he's got to go into the first aid station. So a trusted older Boy Scout who could drive was allowed to use Howie's car. So we're going in across all these camps. So somebody had the idea, and it wasn't me, and I was in the back seat. Well, why don't you turn on Howie's siren a little bit? So we give a blast for like 10 seconds or whatever. People come running out from the camps, look around, you know, we look around like that. And then pretty soon we turn the red lights on, and then we went into the first aid area, and the nurse got one look at him and said, oh. And so he had to put salve on like 3 times a day. I didn't, even though, remember now, I was willing to deliver a baby, but I said that was going further than I wanted to help, was to help him put that salve on 3 times a day. But what I learned after that, how important it was to supervise people and kind of watch what they're doing, because his was pretty painful. So that was another learning experience for me, and another great thing. And the camp was always great every year. So I always said back when you had issues and you had problems, and you know, who'd you call? You had the Boy Scouts. You give a group of boys, you know, that age, a mission, and I mean, they'll just tear right into it and really get the work done. So, and it was a great way to build teamwork also. So as I got older and started to get involved in you know, other things, along the line, I would get involved in different things. But so as an adult, and this happened to me about 3 years ago, I would always say, people in the office, which I don't know if I've found many yet, I'd say, were you ever in Boy Scouts? Most of them would always say no. And there was this world-renowned doctor from down at Mayo Clinic that he and I and some other people were involved in this early startup medical thing. And the people that structured it wrong and kind of messed up the company. And he felt obligated to take it over and try to write it up, because most people bought it on kind of his name. And if you talk to anybody around the country or whatever, I mean, he's like the guru of orthopedic surgery. So he was in our office about 1.5 years ago, and I've had quite a bout with issues with pain and whatever in my leg from original Achilles surgery 8 years ago, and it's been really difficult. So I go down the mail a lot. So who is my interpreter and gets the files ready and whatever? My trusty assistant and partner, Lisa Riley. So yeah, so and so we got it so organized. When we would go to doctors around the country, they'd all say, I never seen anything like this. Because they said, nobody's ever come in with it so organized, because there's so much stuff that was in it. Timelines, you know, the whole thing. So anyway, every time I go down to mail, there would be, you'd have a procedure done. It'd take you a week to try to understand what they wrote, you know, and they can use 16 words for the same darn thing. So you're trying to look it up. So this doctor would come up and always ask myself and Gene Bauer in our office, you know, what does he do? How does he run this company? And he wanted to do really the right and fair thing. And I said, you just do the right thing. You know, you go with your heart, and you know when things are right and wrong, and you just keep having to do it. So we keep helping him. Where's Gene?
Right here.
Oh, geez, snuck up on me. So, like usual, you know. So we would help them, and they always felt so bad about taking all our time. Well, then here's poor Lisa trying to translate this stuff. So a couple different times I asked him if he would help Lisa. So I finally said, well, geez, why don't we become partners? And he started to smile, and I said, why don't you help me with the medical stuff? He didn't understand the business language. I said, we'll help you with the business things. So we would keep trying to help them, you know, do the right thing, you know, stay on the path, you know, get more sales, cut down the expenses, and, you know, and do whatever. So finally, about a year and a half ago, I had him in, and I said, the typical thing what I say, were you ever in the Boy Scouts? And he said, yes. And I said, well, give me the oath. Now, this guy is in his mid-70s, stands up, puts his shoulders back, holds up his hand, you know, to do it, and he gives the oath, and just perfectly. And so we got talking about it, and so he was a Boy Scout. He said he was reluctantly didn't get to go on as Eagle Scout because, you know, sports and whatever got in the way, which it did with other people. And so, so I said, okay, listen to what you said, and then take the Scout law and look at it. And the things that it says in there is how you run a business. And I said, you do that and you can't go wrong. So that was good. And then he calls me all the time and he says, you're right. And so he was sorry that he couldn't come tonight. He's in Texas. So then, you know, we go from there to CSM. So in CSM's case, when people used to want to come and talk to us, well, what's it like working here? I started as a young age and said, everybody works. And so what's that mean? And then my friends actually named my first boat, Everybody Works. But what we told them, you know, depending on what we have to do, and we'd open up new hotels, and so Julie was our HR person at that time, and other people, everybody would pitch in and help. So it would be maybe running dishes through the dishwasher, maybe there's a whole pallet of clock radios. You try to set up 200 clock radios, and then you go over 5 minutes, and now you gotta go all the way around again. Try doing that a couple of hundred times. So, you know, there's that, making beds, etc. So, you know, everybody works. We had a big event down at the depot over one weekend with a wedding, an Indian wedding for 700 or 800, with them coming in on an elephant, and that being a separate menu to 2,200 under the shed for stuff or whatever. We had to get actual food trucks to come in and hold that, and we had to call on everybody to help out. So we had, you know, people from all over, you know, come in, maintenance men, whatever, and we had people washing dishes, and, you know, everybody doing different stuff, and everybody had a great time. And so, you know, that's kind of been the model. So when I got more involved in charity, it was me kind of getting involved, and I said, you know, this just doesn't feel right. I want to get everybody else in. So what we tried to do was go back and structure charities that we could get in and get involved as a team. So the preference was to find charities that we could work at besides, and it couldn't be all company hours. It had to be personal hours besides. And I think they're rolling, I don't know if they're rolling some of the footage, but they should be, of, or the pictures. So we've been involved with Gillette Children's Hospital. We've been involved with People Serving People, you know, a host of them. And so for the last 4 or 5 years, it's been the Ronald McDonald House, which probably a lot of you have gotten the squeeze on, to come to the shop and sip. So there we raise money, and probably there's one of me in a jail outfit, is where there would be people take you to jail in the office, and the only way you could get out is you had to call on your cell phone and have people give up to $300 or $400 bail money and use their credit card to give it. That goes in the pot for the Ronald McDonald House. So we had Gene Day, we've had everything else where employees give money, but then we have a lot of fundraisers we would do, and so the biggest one that's most popular is the Shop and Sip, where we give companies to donate and whatever, then we get a lot of people. I was in Africa this year when they had it. I know it was very successful. There's lots of people, and it was the highest amount ever. And is Brad here tonight? We're the biggest contributor to Ronald McDonald around the country, or something like that? Yeah, okay, we're the biggest contributor to Ronald McDonald around the country. And the wonderful thing is we have projects and people in about 20 states, and they're in all those states. So they can help out locally. And so the people go and cook meals for the families that are there, and then the people that want to come back and take a break while their child is in, getting work, and it's a nice relaxing place, and the people really have fun going and cooking the food and give it to them. So everybody does love it, and so I've always believed in the teamwork, and that teamwork is really paid off. Unfortunately, couldn't take everybody to Africa with me. I wasn't sure all what was going to go on, but it was very interesting, and spent last weekend rounding up chickens that I guess we were successful, right? So we're going to have a couple chickens in hopefully everybody's household in Uganda. I've had over the last 3 or 4 months as I go along, I've had people with different companies or whatever offer different things up. So I got my crew following up on it, and so this one we've been working on for a while. So this is the World Meat Association, and their mission last year was to donate chickens and train people in Africa, mainly the women, to grow 2 chickens for the household, get eggs, have more, breed and get more chickens, eat some, and then, have more chickens. So, and their mission was to do this besides. So they got money. We have boots on the ground in Uganda, and so it said this is a great match. So hopefully that's being done, and got about 3 or 4 others that we're doing. And so the people in the company are involved in a lot of these also. So I think it's, everybody has the great pride that, we do great stuff. So it's really a lot of fun. So in closing, I'd like to thank all the CSM employees. I would like to thank St. Thomas, the Uganda students, and Charles. I never got to write you a letter yet because I'm still recuperating from coming back, but boy, that was quite the show. We had a 5 or 6 hour celebration with 2 marching bands, probably, I don't know, 15. I haven't seen any of the movies yet, and we have, as we think now, more than 2,000 still pictures. We have maybe 3,000 or 4,000. So obviously haven't gotten through all that yet, but it went on for 5 or 6 hours, and the people were unbelievable, and they're really, really appreciative people, and everybody smiles. And somebody said, I couldn't go to Africa. I wouldn't want to have to deal with the beggars. And I stopped and I thought about it for a minute, and I said, never saw anybody beg. And then I called my sidekick that went with me, and I said, did we ever see that anywhere? And we were in 7 countries, including Zimbabwe, during a military coup. And no, I did not start it, nor did I really finish it. We were able to get out of there. There were tanks on the streets and armored cars, but we did get out. So, It was a great experience, and African people are wonderful, and they want to hug and kiss you when they see you, man or woman, and everybody's got a smile on their face. They just glow. So I want to thank our company, thank everybody here that's been involved, and I won't go through the names, so I'm done. You know, I didn't take quite the 3 hours, so thank you.